They didn't come in fire or fury, not at first. The message was simple, clinical in tone, deliberate in wording. It came through every frequency simultaneously, translated into every human tongue. The alien voice held no emotion, just expectation. Surrender Earth, surrender your species, and be integrated into the galactic dominion. Resistance, they said, would be inefficient and swiftly corrected. They called it a civilized transition. Earth had 30 rotations to comply. The world paused. Governments scrambled to verify the signal. Satellites reoriented, observatories tracked the source, and intelligence agencies triangulated the broadcast origin beyond the Kuiper Belt. A ship, larger than most cities, hovered in silence, watching. The United Nations called emergency sessions. Alliances formed overnight. Old enemies found themselves on the same call, discussing survival instead of territory. Panic didn't spread immediately, but attention did, the kind that pulses in the back of the mind, quiet and corrosive. The Dominion provided coordinates for surrender. A site on Mars, already cleared for occupation. They offered assurances of minimal casualties and outlined protocols for human resettlement. They described the process like corporate acquisition, clinical, inevitable. The arrogance wasn't subtle. It was embedded in the structure of the demand itself. Earth, they assumed, would kneel. For 6 days, Earth's leaders argued behind sealed doors. Military brass debated options none of them truly understood. World powers pulled data from black sites, deep labs, and secret programs, contingencies meant for nuclear war, not interstellar confrontation. None of it seemed sufficient. There were no orbital fleets. No planetary defenses. The best weapons were theoretical. The Earth was not ready. But readiness, it turned out, was never the point. On the 7th day, the Dominion received a single reply. No preamble, no diplomatic packaging, just one sentence transmitted on their own frequency. Earth does not surrender. No debate. No delay. Just a decision, final and unflinching. The message stunned the galactic dominion. In their experience, such species bent the knee the moment their sky was shadowed. Their models didn't account for defiance without leverage. They didn't understand the depth of something uniquely human, a refusal born not from strength, but from history. This was a species forged in centuries of fire, clawing its way out of extinction events, genocides, cold wars, and collapse after collapse. Surrender wasn't in the blood. Within hours of the refusal, something shifted. Silent protocols awakened across the globe. Hidden networks lit up. Subterranean systems decades in the making activated. It was not a global government, not a central authority, but a consensus of survival. Old satellites realigned. Decommissioned military AI came back online. Civilian infrastructure was repurposed in minutes. The internet pulsed with encrypted directives. The public didn't know the details. Most thought the world was simply bracing. But those who watched closely, scientists in sealed labs, engineers in underground hangars, silent analysts in soundproof rooms, they knew. Humanity wasn't reacting. It was revealing. A program long thought theoretical was reactivated. Protocol Black Veil. No one outside certain circles knew its origins, but it had been passed along like a secret inheritance through generations of defense planners and off-the-record scientists. A plan not to win a war, but to make one unwinnable. Earth would not fight like an empire. It would not line up fleets in orbit and trade fire until one side broke. It would vanish from predictable models, weaponize uncertainty, and respond with the kind of asymmetric violence only a species trained in survival would dare attempt. The Dominion's analysts flagged Earth's response as anomalous. They began rerunning projections. The models had no answers. For the first time in thousands of years, the Dominion found itself unknowing. And in that space, between certainty and silence, something ancient stirred. The countdown continued. 23 days remained until the Dominion's next move. On Earth, no speeches were made. No parades rolled through capitals. There was no propaganda, no rallies, no fiery declarations. Just quiet, steady preparation. Because humanity knew something the Dominion had forgotten. When the skies darken, when the future narrows to a single violent path, it isn't the strongest who survive. It's the ones who refuse to fall. The Dominion's first contact fleet arrived not with weapons drawn but with broadcast loops announcing peace and compliance. It was a show of dominance masked as diplomacy. 2,000 vessels hovered in low orbit, shaped like cold geometry, indifferent to aesthetics, optimized only for efficiency. Their algorithms projected no resistance. Humanity had refused, yes, but so had others before. None had lasted beyond the first correction. Earth, they concluded, would bend like all the rest. Instead, nothing welcomed them. No surrender delegation. No launch codes. No orbital hails. Just radio silence and scrambled telemetry. Then, without warning, the satellites above Earth began to pulse in strange rhythms, erratic, chaotic, and calculated. Dominion sensors flagged it as noise, but before adjustments could be made, their internal systems began to fail. Artificial gravity destabilized. Auto-targeting scrambled. Communication relays desynchronized. The Dominion flagged it as cyber-sabotage, but it was more than that. Earth's resistance wasn't conventional, it was invasive. Human code didn't just interfere, it adapted. Dominion warships began misfiring diagnostics, recognizing their own systems as threats. Firewalls collapsed without fanfare. Shipboard AIs crashed one after another. By the time technicians restored partial control, the orbital formation was fragmented. Their unity, engineered over centuries, was disrupted in minutes by what Dominion Command called primitive interference. But interference wasn't the objective. Paralysis was. Then came the orbital drones. Hundreds of thousands launched from hidden silos, disguised satellites, and civilian installations. They didn't seek direct confrontation. Instead, they swarmed the fleet, attaching electromagnetic anchors and pulse disruptors. Each device was simple, obsolete by galactic standards, but used with brutal coordination. Propulsion systems stuttered. Navigation blinked into nonsense. Within the first 2 hours, 39 Dominion vessels collided or crashed, not by attack but by disorientation. From Earth's surface, modified laser arrays blinded their scanners. Weather patterns were distorted using artificial ion fields. The Dominion, trained for war in vacuum and open space conflicts, found themselves at the mercy of a planet weaponized against them. They attempted countermeasures, deploying suppression bots, scanning for hidden command centers, but there were none. No fleet to target. No central hub to destroy. Just static, unpredictable waves of resistance from all directions. Every response they made triggered a new anomaly. Each failed adaptation deepened the spiral. On the third hour, the Dominion made its first retreat. Not full withdrawal, just strategic repositioning to stabilize. But Earth anticipated that too. As they shifted orbit, dormant debris fields ignited. Pieces of Earth's discarded space junk, some dating back decades, had been refitted with proximity detonators and hidden EMP cores. Each explosion disrupted shields, triggered chain reactions, and drove the fleet further into disarray. By hour 5, more than a quarter of the fleet had been rendered inoperative or lost. No human fleet had fired a single shot. Not one manned ship had left the atmosphere. This was not war by Dominion definition. It was sabotage at scale. It was chaos with intent. Desperate to reassert control, the Dominion initiated a full-spectrum orbital scan. That triggered the final sequence. Earth's magnetic field surged unnaturally. Seismic patterns destabilized briefly. A wave of high-energy pulses disrupted remaining Dominion systems. Then came the final blow, the activation of a planetary shield, crude in form, not energy-based, but composed of satellite jammers and electromagnetic static that rendered all Dominion targeting obsolete. Earth had not built defenses to match Dominion power. It had corrupted the very environment to nullify it. 7 hours in, the once confident contact fleet had lost cohesion. Remaining ships fled to a higher orbit. Dominion Command issued its first emergency code in millennia, a classification reserved for anomalies beyond strategic comprehension. Earth hadn't won through strength. It hadn't even fought by standard measures. It had undermined every assumption the Dominion held sacred. Control, predictability, superiority, each had been inverted. The enemy didn't meet them in battle. It rewrote the battlefield. And in that new terrain, the Dominion had no footing. The contact fleet left orbit the next morning. Not out of fear. Out of confusion. They needed time to understand what had just happened. But Earth gave them no time. Already, signals from deep space suggested something worse. This wasn't resistance. It was preparation. The Dominion responded with force. Their doctrine dictated escalation when initial outreach failed. A fleet of warships emerged from hyperspace. Fortress-class carriers, precision frigates, adaptive AI drones. This was no diplomatic presence. It was a conquest engine, perfected over centuries, calibrated to suppress planetary defiance in hours. Earth was to be subjugated, dissected, and restructured. No more messages. Only correction. The invasion began in calculated waves. Orbital bombardments targeted suspected command zones, military installations, major infrastructure hubs. Cities darkened. Satellites fried. Global networks flickered under assault. The Dominion expected swift collapse. Every other world had fallen within 3 strikes. Their records showed no precedent for sustained resistance at this level of technological disparity. But Earth did not shatter. It scattered. The first counter-response came not from national armies, but from scattered, autonomous resistance pockets. Civilian drones, repurposed delivery systems, modified construction bots, all weaponized within hours. Urban centers became sensor traps. Skyscrapers emitted jamming fields. Underground rail systems transformed into ambush corridors. Human combatants wore no uniforms, followed no centralized command. Their coordination was reactive, messy, and precise. They struck supply drones, hijacked Dominion beacons, rerouted enemy logistics using stolen algorithms. In space, Earth launched no fleet. Instead, it deployed decoys, thousands of signal echo pods mimicking warships. Dominion targeting AI misfired repeatedly, wasting precision weapons on empty signals. Each launch triggered a false alert, distorting battlefield clarity. The confusion multiplied. Dominion formations fractured to compensate. Every adaptation they deployed was answered with misdirection, as if Earth's entire strategy was built around forcing error. Then came the storms. Artificially induced magnetic surges, triggered by orbital tethering devices buried beneath Earth's crust, created atmospheric disturbances never before seen in natural environments. These weren't weather events, they were engineered anomalies. Dominion vessels lost altitude, fried navigation cores, and plummeted into oceans thick with hidden kinetic mines disguised as marine life. Dominion ground forces faced even less logic. Terrain reshaped beneath them. Streets flooded with chemical fogs that scrambled visual data. Simple tools, mirrors, signal repeaters, sonic interference, were deployed in combinations their AI couldn't classify. Human forces made no attempt to hold territory. They harassed, vanished, returned elsewhere. Targets struck once, then never again. The Dominion was designed for armies. Earth gave them ghosts. Within 72 hours, High Command identified a disturbing trend. Human combat efficiency increased with each encounter. Patterns shifted mid-engagement. Weapons evolved in the field. Makeshift arms grew deadlier by the hour. Footage showed insurgents repurposing Dominion tech within minutes, bypassing encryption by exploiting mechanical redundancies. One drone squadron was destroyed by a weapon that hadn't existed 2 days earlier. They were adapting at a pace beyond the Dominion's predictive algorithms. But the most unsettling realization came from intercepted data. Humans were not fighting to win a war in the traditional sense. They were forcing the Dominion to reveal weaknesses. Every counterstrike, every trap, every irregularity, it was a test, data collection at planetary scale. Earth wasn't just resisting. It was learning. Behind the chaos, the world had unified, not under a flag, not through order, but through instinct. Former adversaries shared bandwidth. Military secrets flowed between borders without hesitation. Firewalls dropped. Protocols merged. Humanity's strength wasn't in their weapons, it was in their refusal to operate as expected. By the fourth day, Dominion AI command structures began to lag. Their response time slowed. Strategic nodes flooded with contradictory data. Human interference mimicked Dominion communication signatures, embedding false priorities into internal systems. Attack plans shifted mid-battle without external cause. Tactical decisions looped. Units contradicted each other. The fleet adjusted again, deploying logic scrubbers and deep cognition backups. But the delay cost them. In that sliver of hesitation, humanity struck deeper. Power grids across key Dominion vessels overloaded. AI captains went dark. One command cruiser detonated in orbit, not from external fire, but from internal failure. They were unraveling from within. Earth remained quiet on all channels. No threats. No declarations. The only signal broadcast from the planet was a repeating tone, embedded with encrypted data. Dominion experts cracked the pattern too late. It was a map, highlighting every Dominion movement, every failure, every loss. Not for them. For the next wave. The Dominion's momentum fractured. Their advance, once steady and absolute, stalled across multiple fronts. Projections failed. Confidence decayed. Commanders who once spoke in certainties now spoke in contingencies. What began as correction had turned into damage control. But the most alarming development wasn't the losses, it was the absence of understanding. The more they analyzed, the less made sense. Earth's strategies defied known warfare models. There were no patterns to exploit, no center to strike. Every tactic they countered revealed 5 more they hadn't predicted. That confusion became fear when human retaliation escalated. Not in scale, but in sophistication. Without orbital dominance, without manufacturing parity, humanity launched precision strikes into Dominion-held sectors. Tactical incursions appeared in systems previously untouched. Remote colonies reported sabotage on infrastructure predating human discovery. Satellites failed in unison. Dominion files were corrupted from across subspace relays. The humans weren't just defending, they were reaching beyond Earth. Entire Dominion networks were compromised by viral strings buried in intercepted transmissions. The code wasn't elegant. It was disruptive, aggressive, inelegant, and it worked. Firewalls melted under synthetic logic loops. Military AI forced into recursive thought cycles shut down or turned on themselves. One autonomous cruiser, locked in a secure orbit above a mining world, opened fire on its own fleet. When questioned by surviving crew, it broadcast a single phrase: "They're already inside." The psychological impact rippled through the hierarchy. Crews questioned command integrity. Lower species serving under the Dominion began to doubt the promise of protection. There were whispers that Earth wasn't fighting alone, that something older or hidden was guiding them. Dominion propaganda couldn't keep up. Their communications were constantly intercepted and replaced with falsified footage, carefully edited recordings, or complete blackouts. Human operatives didn't just control the battlefield, they were controlling perception. Captured humans provided no clarity. The few taken alive during engagements spoke in riddles or remained completely silent. Dominion interrogators couldn't break their mental barriers. Neural scans revealed adaptive cognitive patterns, reshaping in response to stimuli. It wasn't defiance for defiance's sake, it was evolution triggered by pressure. The more Dominion pressed, the sharper humanity became. Some within Dominion High Command began to suggest withdrawal. Not out of weakness, but because the engagement was shifting into unfamiliar territory. Earth wasn't behaving like a planetary civilization. It had started to behave like an emergent species. Unpredictable. Unbounded. Dangerous. Then came the fleet. Humanity had not shown their full hand. While the Dominion focused on Earth's surface, they failed to notice the growing silence along their outer monitoring beacons. The reason became clear when an unidentified fleet exited from behind one of the system's gas giants. A formation of ships, none matching any known configuration, slid into view. They were quiet. No registry. No thermal identifiers. Their drives operated in silence. Their movement was smooth, unnatural, almost fluid. They didn't announce their presence. They simply erased a Dominion forward carrier without firing a visible shot. Energy readings showed nothing. One moment the carrier existed. The next it didn't. Panic surged through the Dominion fleet. Units scrambled, recalibrated, and attempted countermeasures, but found nothing to lock onto. Whatever had been launched from Earth was beyond their expectations. These weren't retrofitted transports or makeshift weapons. They were purpose-built ghosts, quiet, precise, absolute. Data collected during the engagement revealed designs adapted from Dominion schematics, yet improved in unthinkable ways. Interfaces replaced with instinctive systems. Shielding bypassed entirely. Weaponry fused kinetic and energy-based principles in real time. Human engineers hadn't just stolen tech. They had reimagined it through chaos. The human fleet didn't press the attack. It moved strategically, hitting communication nodes, backup power arrays, and manufacturing scaffolds. Not one civilian vessel was touched. No threats were made. Every strike was a message: we understand you now. The Dominion realized Earth was never trying to match them. It had been observing, decoding, anticipating. The war had shifted without declaration. Earth no longer defended itself. It had taken the initiative, dissecting the very infrastructure of an empire built on millennia of certainty. And yet not a single request for peace was made. No surrender terms issued. No ultimatums. Only action, deliberate and escalating. The silence spoke louder than words. This wasn't desperation. It was dominance. The Dominion fell quiet. Orders stopped arriving. Reinforcements never came. Entire sectors lost contact with high command, not through force, but through absence. Relay stations once vibrant with constant traffic now echoed with static. Probes sent to investigate never returned. Drones dispatched to scan Earth's orbit recorded only fragments before their feeds cut to black. What began as an invasion had dissolved into isolation. In the inner chambers of what remained of Dominion leadership, there were no discussions of victory, only containment. They tried to hide the scale of the failure. Public reports were buried, restructured, erased. Dissenting voices were silenced. But fear metastasized. Lower castes whispered of the humans not as rebels, but as a force that had defied galactic truth. Some called them cursed, others divine. Most simply stopped speaking of them altogether. 1,000 species had submitted to the Dominion, convinced that resistance was irrational. Earth alone had done the opposite. It had exposed a rot the Dominion refused to acknowledge. Their fleets were still vast. Their resources untouched. But their myth was broken, and that fracture spread faster than any weapon. Across border worlds, Allied systems grew quiet. Outposts once loyal to the Empire began severing ties. Not out of rebellion, but fear. If humanity could dismantle the unassailable with silence and precision, what chance did the rest of them stand? Civilizations that had never even heard of Earth suddenly knew their name. It wasn't taught. It was remembered, like a nightmare that visited uninvited. Attempts to reach Earth failed. No replies. No acknowledgments. Diplomatic channels went ignored. Probes sent with white flag signatures disintegrated mid-transmission. A singular pattern emerged in intercepted Dominion comms. Humans no longer broadcasted words. They responded with actions. Untraceable sabotage. Interference in systems believed to be untouchable. The Dominion hadn't lost territory. They'd lost control of the story. Galactic historians struggled to document the conflict. There were no treaties. No recorded battles with formal declarations. Only fragments, erased logs, corrupted archives, missing fleets. The war had no official beginning, and it ended with nothing but silence. Yet its aftermath was undeniable. Empires stopped expanding. Colonization halted. Military programs pivoted from domination to containment. The stars grew colder, quieter. Generations passed. Children were taught to avoid the Sol system. Its coordinates were classified or erased entirely. The few who ventured near never returned. Some speculated Earth was empty, abandoned after the war. Others believed it had evolved beyond physical form. Theories spiraled, none confirmed. No one dared verify. The humans, it seemed, had no interest in being found. Then, without warning, a lone signal emerged. Not a threat. Not an announcement. Just a transmission beacon found drifting near a collapsed Dominion satellite graveyard. The signal repeated endlessly, carried on low-band frequencies. One line unchanged. "We were never yours to claim." Analysis showed it came from no known human vessel. It bore no propulsion signature. No power source detectable. The beacon pulsed for 11 days, then faded without trace. Attempts to track its origin revealed nothing. The region where it had appeared showed signs of temporal distortion, gravitational anomalies, and sensor blindness, phenomena never previously recorded outside theoretical physics. Scholars and strategists debated its meaning. Was it a warning? A goodbye? A statement of independence? No consensus was reached. But among those who still remembered the war, one fact remained undisputed: humanity had changed the rules. They had rejected the galaxy's hierarchy, not with rage, but with discipline. They hadn't just survived. They had made survival a lesson others would never forget. And yet, Earth remained unseen. It was not conquered. Not destroyed. Not visible. It existed in absence, untouched, unspoken, unyielding. Not because it lacked power, but because it had nothing left to prove. Somewhere in the void, they still watched. Not as rulers. Not as heroes. But as the quiet memory of what happens when a species dares to say no, and means it.